Kris, so
Hey.
you were the one who told me about the movie Barbarian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah.
So I watched it this weekend, and I don't want to give. There's some good twists and turns in it. I enjoyed it, I will say. Um, but the base premise, in case anybody who is on here who hasn't watched it yet, it is on. I think it's available on HBO Max right now. Is where I watched it.
Yeah.
Um, is that basically it starts with two people getting like booked in the same place at this like one through HomeAway, one through Airbnb in like this very kind of desolate neighborhood in Detroit. And then of course there happens to be at this Airbnb there's like some crazy stuff going on in the basement. And so I watched it this weekend and I enjoyed it, but also I was starting to think because we're renting a Airbnb in New Hampshire, this cabin for Thanksgiving. Um, and the thing is, we got a good deal on it because it had never been rented. It hadn't been rented
Uh-oh.
before, and it
Uh-oh.
started to make me be like, oh, okay. Now I'm like, I was a
Watch
little
out.
freaked out. So I went and looked, and there is now one review from a verified person. So, and they
Thank
apparently had
God.
a lovely stay. So, feeling okay about it, I think. But I don't know. Have you ever stayed in an Airbnb or something like that without any reviews yet?
Not without any reviews. I refuse to do that. I'm too scared. Because you also hear horror stories about just like total, shitholes that are marketed differently, or you find out you're actually in a hostel and not your own Airbnb, whatever it might be. Anyway, I have not done that, but I have stayed at Airbnbs by myself that are that size of a home, like a small home for work, which is what the two main people in the beginning are sort of there for. And there's always like a room that is like locked away, like you can't go, you're not supposed to go in that room. And before this movie even came out, I was like, oh, I wonder what's in that room. I'm scared. What if someone's in there? So the whole beginning, the setup was amazing and it rang very true to when I go to say it's little small house Airbnbs for work.
Ah, I mean, it was well done. It was
It
creepy.
was,
I encourage folks to check it out if you haven't yet.
yeah. The end is
I,
wild.
And the end is totally wild. I'm also I'm not done with it yet, but I'm in the middle of watching The Northman, which is on Amazon Prime right now, which is the same director who did The Witch.
Oh,
And yeah,
also you're going through like all the Skarsgårds because Bill Skarsgård was in Barbarian and
right,
Alex Skarsgård is in The Northman, right?
right. And yeah, who did The Witch with Anya Taylor-Joy. And then
Great. That's a great movie.
I think I don't know if it's Lighthouse or The Lighthouse, but have you seen that one where it's
Oh my God,
Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson?
that movie is crazy
It,
too. It's
it's
so
nuts.
bizarre.
I highly recommend it if
Yeah.
people haven't seen it. It's very weird.
That's one of those movies that I don't need to see ever again, but I'm glad I saw it the first time and it was crazy.
It's like very stylistic and
Yeah, and
strange.
weird and and the acting's great. Yeah.
Yeah, Willem
It's
Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are both incredible in it.
Yep, that was the first time I was like, I really like Robert Pattinson. He's good. We all liked Willem Dafoe already, but
Yeah, Robert Pattinson kind of made his dramatic switch around then. Anyway, should we jump into
well, I
the
thought you were
episode?
going to ask me if I watched the new Lindsay Lohan Netflix Christmas movie yet, and the answer would be I watched the first half of it. But we'll save that for another podcast. Let's do our podcast.
You know what? I'll leave that as good for Lindsay. That's what she should be
Yeah,
doing right now. That's what I
yeah.
said when I saw that trailer. Anyway, let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to This American Horror Story, an unofficial podcast about the FX hit show American Horror Story. I am your host, Tyler Moss, here with my co-host.
Chris Husted. Hey Tyler, how you doing?
I'm
Coming
doing pretty well.
took a little
Yeah,
break in between these two episodes.
we did. It was my birthday Friday, so I appreciate a little bit of the pause in between. I also do apologize during this episode if you get some like stray like saw sounds in the background. There's construction happening out on the next door house, and we're recording this on Sunday afternoon currently. So that's what happens when you do daytime recording, I guess. But at
Mm-hmm.
least we got more energy than we would if we were doing it late on a Wednesday
Wednesday
night.
night.
Speaking of which, I think we did a little game planning. And what we've decided for the finale is that you and I are going to record episode 9 live on Wednesday night, and then we're going to record episode 10 on Thursday night. So we have a little bit more time to do our typical deep breaking down the episode, but also talking through the entire season and kind of giving out our season awards, I guess is how I describe what we do at the end there. So
It's crazy that we're already there and we're already having to do this. This season flew by.
that's what happens when you do stacked episodes, I guess. But here
And I
we are,
hope
episode 8, Fire Island.
and we'll discuss that also, like format and distribution and release, how it all went in the finale. But yeah,
Totally.
anyway, Fire Island.
Fire Island. So, before we really dive into breaking down the episode, as always, we appreciate it when you all send us, your questions, comments, theories at thisamericanhorrorstory@gmail.com, or by going to our Facebook page and sending us a DM or posting, facebook.com/thisamericanhorrorstory. And I wanted to have a couple comments that were shared with us between the last episode and this episode that I thought were great. One was a comment from Amy on Facebook who pointed out that she was particularly shouting out the sound editing in the episodes from this week. And
Cool.
apparently Matt Quayle, who's the name of the person who did the sound editing, was the same sound editor on Mr. Robot. So if you heard some kind of similarities, that would be the case for this particular season, or at least these past episodes. And then we had a comment from Mark on Facebook, which is great, about a little bit of reality check into the time it takes to get to Fire Island from New York City.
Good.
Apparently, you have to take a train. You have to take a train for an hour. Then you jump on a trolley, then you take the ferry to the island. So it's a 2-hour trip. So the point that Mark was making is some of these timelines in which like Henry and Gino are following Sam and Patrick over there back and forth, or like Patrick is hurrying back to help Gino, is a little unrealistic.
It's like Game of Thrones when you're like, how did you get from there to there in a week when it would take months?
Exactly.
Where's this teleporting machine?
100%. And then Mark also included a picture of himself and Robin Bird from that Robin Bird show.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, apparently she still hosts a weekly dance party on Fire Island during the summer. So that's probably where that came
rad.
from.
That is so cool. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was hilarious. So that was, I appreciate that, Mark. Thanks for sharing. Before we dive into the cold open, Kris, this is a Sunday afternoon, but what are you drinking?
Since it is a Sunday afternoon, I have a cold, refreshing glass of a Sonoma County Pinot Noir Rosé.
Look, that's quite a pour too. Good for you.
We call this the airport pour.
I like it. I am taking it a little bit easy this afternoon, and I'm drinking actually Earl Grey tea, which is one of my favorite teas. So just
I love an Earl Grey tea. Bergamot.
Rainy Sunday. Just getting ready for the week. You know how it goes. Kris, do you want to take us through the cold open of this episode titled Fire Island?
Yes. Before I do, since this is called Fire Island, I have not. So my knowledge of Fire Island is just the reference of like it being this location where a lot of gay men go to party and have fun and do their thing just outside of New York. And then I did watch the movie Fire Island. I think it was on Netflix with Bowen Yang. Have you seen that?
I know of the movie. I haven't seen it yet.
I recommend it. It was pretty good, actually. I mean, it's for a Netflix comedy, whatever. But it really helped like explain a lot of like how big the ferry is and like what the issues are and like how people meet each other in this certain party location. So I found that watching this episode gave me, having seen that movie first, like a couple months ago, gave me a better foundation of understanding like the dynamic of this like not remote, but like this destination.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's a setting with personality, kind of like, I mean, we've said that about New York this season too, is it's like, it's in the same way they did Provincetown 2 last season. Like they've done a good job lately of kind of giving settings, a certain distinctive feel.
They've always been, we'll talk about this too, but like they've always been pretty good about the asylum, the hotel, Cortez.
I mean, of course, those settings are too. I mean, I think I meant it more in the sense of like real city. Places, like real places.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. Okay, so we are on the ferry to Fire Island, and we're with Theo, who is barfing, and Adam. And to catch everyone up, they're going because they're meeting up with Gino and Patrick, who have put a down payment on a house or something like that. It's a little unclear, but they're also unemployed. So, or Patrick is. Theo has been barfing not just because of seasickness. He says he's been actually barfing like Hannah's been barfing, and Adam thinks it may have something to do with the immune system virus going around that Hannah's been investigating. And Hannah, who also left a voicemail to Adam saying that she wasn't going to make it. So, and we think, we haven't seen a body yet, but it's implied that she may not be around anymore.
Right.
So they're talking, and Theo opens his book up, I guess, and discusses all the STDs he's had. He confesses like all of them and how many times he's had them, which is quite a lot for a young guy. And then Adam says he thinks he had crabs once, but it turned out it wasn't. And that's kind of cute. And then Theo calls Adam Saint Bernadette and says he's just looking forward to being a one man guy. And it's kind of sweet. So they're really kind of having this thing, but truly Theo looks very worse for the wear right now. He is pale, vomiting, even his jokes, his energy is very low. Well, they get off as everyone's exiting the ferry, turns out Fran and her gang are also on this ferry, and they throw water on Gino for taking the Pride issue cover, which, okay. And then Sam is there too at the dock with two new twinks, and Theo sees them. Patrick sees them also because Patrick and Gino are walking off at the same time, and they all kind of go their separate ways, which was a great sequence. I thought, like, it's one of those movies openings where you see, it's almost like White Lotus. Also, like, everyone rides on the same ship and they all go their certain ways, but you get a little bit of a dynamic of what's going on with each grouping, and you know that they're going to cross paths when they're stuck on this island together. So I thought it was really awesome. At the end, when they all walked off, I was like, well, the whole party's here. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see what happens. And then we go to the credits.
Yeah, I think the main thing I was going to just talk about is, like, I feel like there was a lot of teasing happening in this opening scene about Theo dying this episode. With, you know, I feel like when we got that quote about him being a one-man guy for the first time ever, it kind of that seems to be, that's a somewhat of a trope, right? Where it's like he's finally changing his ways after going through all this, and of course, when, you know, you're finally invested in changing your ways, tends to be the time the person gets, you know, killed.
Right.
So that was, you know, a little bit of, to your point, or a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? It felt like
foreshadow.
Exactly. Thank you. Just struggling for that word in my brain bank today.
It's Sunday.
Then also agreeing with you too that, like, it was a little funny that Fran and her gang were there, and then they were somewhat obnoxious for tossing Gino in water. Like,
you just threw water at your boss.
Oh, well, she's making bank apparently doing all her tarot cards now.
No, so. That's true. And that's the way they explained her presence there too, which is funny.
Yeah. This episode was written by Nim Martell, Charlie Carver, and Our Lady J, who've all been penning various episodes this season, and was directed by Jennifer Lynch, who I think also directed an episode. Maybe I'm struggling to remember whether.
Well,
Jennifer
she's done other seasons.
She's definitely done American Horror Story. Yeah. I don't remember if she's done NYC already.
Right.
But so we open back up after the credits on the beach where Pat and Gino are drinking Mai Tais. I like how the
little umbrella.
The Mai Tai has kind of become a symbol of, like, overcoming Whiteley, you know what I mean? Appreciating life. They're starting to kind of get their makeout on when Patrick tries to unbutton Gino's shirt. But something's up here, right? Gino doesn't like him starting to address him. And Patrick is immediately mad at Gino for, like, still not being over cheating, I guess. Feeling like Gino's harboring some latent resentment or something, which, to be fair, Gino probably should be still. Like, Patrick was covering up a lot of stuff. But Gino then starts to say, like, I think there's something wrong with me. He has more growths on his body like we'd seen before. And so that's why he's kind of being weird about sexual touching, I guess.
Yeah, he said, you don't like, or no, Patrick says to Gino, you don't like it when I touch you anymore. It's been like that for a while. I hate exposition like that, by the way, when it's like the time jump, we didn't have a long time jump. Like, it's been like that for a while.
I feel like we would know that.
Yeah.
Or like we already do know that, right?
And it's like, let's create more tension in this relationship after they just got through this massively traumatic experience together. Let's make it tense again. Like,
I found that relationship a little bit annoying this episode, if I'm being honest. Like,
it started off okay, I thought. I was like, oh, they're kissing, and, like, yeah, you know, good for them. They deserve this. And Gino really wanted to go on this trip. Remember him talking to Adam and trying to convince him to come, and, like, move on. There's no more killers.
Yeah, how great. Well, that's kind of where this is going, because all of a sudden, you know, Gino's worrying about the implications of the illness, but Patrick's still thinking it's something psychological about the Mai Tai killer and everything. Then Gino starts telling Patrick that there's still something out there, and he gets super angry, but at the same time, I was thinking, like, isn't this what Gino yelled at Adam for last episode, was for still thinking there was something out there when he said it was just the Mai Tai killer and only the Mai Tai killer?
100%. And here we go again, rewriting Gino to be something a little different than he was last episode. Remember when he was scared with the lead pipe going into the the basement of the building to find Whiteley there, and yet he's a war veteran.
I know.
And now in like last episode, he was telling Adam to like move on, and they got the Mai Tai killer, like come party and relax and take your mind off that. And then this episode, he's now the opposite of that again. So a little inconsistent again.
Which is a bummer for me because I have appreciated the acting of Joe
Mantello, yeah.
I always mess up his last name, and of the character Gino this season. But I do feel like they've done Gino some injustices lately of his character being inconsistent.
Yeah, generally he's a great character, and we really like him. Like one of the new favorites, I think. But it is a little bit frustrating that they keep changing him to be something different, depending what the episode needs for tension and drama.
Right. So they have a falling out again. Gino walks off, and Patrick, returns to the house where Adam and Theo are kind of starting to get it on. Also, this house is redonkulous. Like, this is the house they put a down payment on. It's like, no wonder they're worried about money, because that place looks like it'd be very expensive.
Yes.
But Patrick arrives home, and he grabs a beer and starts being an asshole to Adam for no reason, interrogating him about Gino being intense at work and stuff like that. This episode was, not only was it a little bit frustrating between Gino and Patrick's relationship, but I as complex as Patrick has been as a character, I've like appreciated him for the most part, but he was just kind of being a dick in this scene, and it was I don't know, it didn't make me like him very much.
Yeah, I agree. I was frustrated with him, and again, I was like, is there some secret that we don't know? But it doesn't seem like that at this point. He's just being a dick.
Right. Patrick takes a shower, and I noted here that like they take the steamiest showers.
Of course, it's Fire Island.
But even like Barbara and stuff, when she was dying, was just like in the hottest shower imaginable. But
nobody takes regular showers; they all take sexy showers.
Yeah. But his growth on his back is clearly visible in this particular scene. Then he goes out and sees Barbara again outside looking out at the ocean, and he kind of goes out to see her. She does like a teleportation situation behind him, and we see that she's some sort of like deteriorated corpse at this point in time. And then Patrick wakes up in like a beach chair, like as if he's waking up from a nightmare.
I want to say I liked this sequence because it was so cheesy. It reminded me of like that 80s campy horror hallucination scene. I hated it for a reason, like I'm so sick of Barbara and I don't understand what her purpose is in any of the story at all. But the way it was filmed, Jennifer Lynch, thumbs up. Like it was just such a reference of, I don't know if it's an actual specific movie, but I just got that vibe from it, and I thought it was hilarious, and a very successful jump scare for me when she was like, you think she's in front of her of Patrick, and then she ends up being behind him. That scared the crap. I jumped.
Yeah.
So good job.
That was well done. And I'll also say too, if I had to speculate why Barbara's hanging around, which again I agree is kind of annoying, I guess maybe it's supposed to be like Patrick's subconscious, because if we figure that Patrick is, because if Patrick is the one, not only obviously he divorced her and everything too, but
he gave her
HIV,
virus,
which is what she died from, and that's embodied by Big Daddy, right? And so I think that maybe it's his subconscious guilt at being the one who gave her the disease.
Okay.
But I agree with you that it feels kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the beach, Gino's out on a walk. Just I don't know. He seems like he starts off at some. I don't know if that was supposed to be like where the body was buried from when they dug up the pieces of that guy that Sam and Patrick, because it seemed like a very specific place where there was almost like a marker in the ground where Gino starts his walk, and Big Daddy's like watching from behind the bush.
So so he follows like the two younger guys from the beach into the woods ish, right? Is that what you're talking about, that scene? So this was hard. There's a few characters. Again, I wish I had subtitles so I could hear what was being said, but I believe that Henry later on tells Gino, like, I saw you like walk to that stick that had, I believe it's Crisco like stuck onto it, because that's where guys are going into the woods to go hook up.
Oh, so that's where Sam takes Henry later, probably.
Yes.
At the end. I see. Okay, I missed that.
And Gino's like, oh, should I go in there? But he doesn't actually commit to going into the woods where all the guys are hooking up.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was good context. So I did miss that.
I had to
But we
rewind multiple times just to try to hear what Henry's saying in that after they run into each other. But continue.
right, and we do see Big Daddy, I believe, peeking out at him
Lurking in the
too.
shadow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then while walking on the beach, that's as you said, Henry pops up and is following him here. But his missing hand hidden underneath his sleeve. But basically, he's now become a stalker of Gino. He's like a admirer. And
What?
this
It's
this
so what?
I mean, if there's anything that makes this work even a little bit, it's just Dennis O'Hare being
Oh
incredibly
yeah.
talented. But basically Henry goes through this whole spiel about how the mob is closely tracking Gino, and he like has let Gino live, but Gino's not intimidated. He's like, I grew up with these guys. They have him come get me, and it only seems to make Henry love Gino even more. And this is when Henry effectively professes his love with him. I don't know. It seems this whole scene seems kind of odd. It's unclear whether or not Henry's really being. Gino indicates
Sincere.
he's being weird because he's on opioids for his missing hand.
Right.
But I don't know. How did you feel about this whole sequence with Henry on the beach?
Loved Henry, love him, love Dennis O'Hare. I think Henry's character is actually one of my favorites. None of this made sense to me. I had to rewind it a few times to try to figure out what he was trying to do in this. And at the end, when he's like begging on his knees, saying he loves him and no one will ever and he gets stopped there. Or if I can't have you know, like he's like Gino stops him. It just went so batshit that I did not understand what was going on.
Is he threatening to murder Gino at that point in time? Like when he was about to say, "If I can't have you, no one can."
That's what I think he was saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he seems like he's obviously gone off his rocker after a few minutes earlier saying the mob knows everything about you and Patrick, and I was supposed to kill you, and they still could kill you easily. They know where you're at and your loops and everything. And then, but I saved you. I don't know. I never saw any indication that there was an underlying unrequited love for Gino from Henry at any point up until this conversation.
Well, there was the episode. Well, there was when they were on the slabs in Whiteley's place, and he was like, "Patrick's too young for you.
That's right.
Could be somebody older." So I think that was
last episode. Yeah.
That was supposed to be like the predecessor to this conversation, I think.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that like this feels so weird for
0 to 100
for Henry's character, and they try to wipe it, or they try to play it off as being a factor based from the opioids, but I don't know if I believe it.
I mean, he was such a cool, calm, collected, like classy, aloof guy Fixer, at the bar that would just drink his, and now he's like this desperate. Sad sack.
No. Yeah, he was cool, and now he was like just sad. I didn't like the direction they took him this episode either. So we go to the restaurant where Theo's looking really sickly at this point in time. Theo and Adam debate going back to the house when Sam walks in with his,
Twinks.
And it was unclear to me whether or not like Theo was supposed to be jealous at that point in time or not. I feel like Sam's like trying to make him jealous, but Theo's just too sick to think anything.
Mm-hmm.
Sam walks out. I was gonna say Sam walks out to chat with Henry, who explains to Sam his longing for Gino, and Sam says he'll find a slab of meat for Henry if he comes to meet him later.
Before moving on from the Sam and Henry interaction, I think Dennis O'Hare gave me my favorite acting moment in the entire season while he was at the bar. Do you remember what he was doing?
Was it when he was trying to wave down the waiter?
He had his money in his hand like this, and he was going, hello, 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 hello. Like this like older like man, a little effeminately, but just hello, waving his money at the bartender who's dealing with all like the young bucks. And I
just totally ignored.
I rewound it 2 or 3 times. I was like, I love you, Dennis O'Hare. That was so funny. So that was my favorite Henry moment and my favorite Dennis O'Hare. Hello.
And then of course Sam comes in and gets a drink immediately.
And he goes like snaps and goes 2.
I know. Did you ever watch Happy Days, that old show?
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so for the Fonz.
Yeah, it's like when someone's trying to play the jukebox in the bar, and then the Fonz comes up and like hits it with his elbow, and it starts playing a song or something. That's kind of where it was like between Sam and
along those lines, real quick. Zachary Quinto is also, he's so perfect in this role. He's so good. He's slimy, but he's got like the swagger, and he's just, I think I'm a big fan of his too. So the two of these guys together are fantastic.
Yeah, although his character takes some real, I mean,
Mm,
he's taken dark turns off and on, but this at the end
yeah.
of this episode,
Well, the end of this
really,
episode, he's just despicable.
uh-huh. But so Sam promises Henry this, slab of meat if he meets him later in the woods, at that, presumably at that place where we saw the Crisco can earlier. But I think Adam has like gone to pay or something like that. It's unclear like
Yeah, he was going to pay,
why
which,
Theo and Adam aren't meeting back up right here at the same bar they were at together. But Sam sneaks off to talk to Theo, and after some back and forth banter, they come to a truce. And for a moment, I'm like, oh, that's good for them. They're coming to a truce. And Sam offers Theo a shot, but Theo takes the shot that Sam was holding for himself. So this is a little bit when I'm like, when they're showing what happened, is it like Sam predicted that Theo would take the shot that he was saving for himself. And so is that the gamesmanship we're expecting, like we're supposed to think about as having happened here?
it's like the Princess Bride where both are poisoned or something like that.
But Sam drinks one too.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he knew which one he had drugged. So yeah, I guess I'd have to rewatch it to see if he like did a sleight of hand or something like it to make sure that Theo got the one that had the drugs in it.
Yeah. But obviously we learn later slips the other drugs, and who knows where Adam is at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
We jump from here to Fran and her friends on a different part of the island.
Fran and her friends doing fondue.
Fran and friends eating fondue. And she this is when she mentioned that she's, they're in this rental because I don't know if she says Sam's name here or not, but we learned that Sam brought her to the island to do tarot and is paying her bank apparently.
Yeah, $50 a reading.
Yeah. And they also are there to look for ticks, it sounds like.
There's a doctor in the Cherry Hill part of Fire Island or something like that, and they're there to discuss the like 50 other cases that she's been looking at that are similar to, I think her name's KK, I forget what her name is, but the friend that has that has the illness,
right? And
or
I
the
think
symptoms.
Tracking this back to the stuff happening on Plum Island that Fran has that theory about,
and the ticks. When
they look out the window and they see Big Daddy hanging out, they like
broad daylight.
Fran like writes him off at first, like, oh, it's just some drunk dude having gone the wrong way, and they kind of start yelling at him. Then he disappears, and next time he's closer on the other side of the house, and is it KK that runs out with the switchblade and like
I was like, I thought that this was it for her.
Yeah, me too. But apparently he walks away when she does that, which was kind of strange.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider what happens in just like the next scene, basically. So jump to nightfall. Gino's back at home. We don't know where Patrick is at this point in time. There's no sign of him right yet. And Gino's carefully making himself a cocktail. Looks like maybe vodka soda, gin and tonic. It's hard to say exactly. There's a lime, I think.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, his record stops. And when out of nowhere, he's tackled by Big Daddy, just similar to how Patrick was back at Barbara's house, right? Gino still has the knife in his hand from when he was cutting the lime. He slashes Big Daddy. And that's when we find out Adam's still there. Adam jumps in to help while Gino stabs Big Daddy in the leg. This is the first time we've seen someone do real damage to Big Daddy like this.
Right.
So they go and hide behind the door, which Big Daddy breaks through with his bare hands. And that's when Patrick shoots him in the back of the head. As they decide to call the police, Adam decides he wants to see Big Daddy's face. And they go back and the corpse is gone. Just plain disappeared. So this was the first time. I don't know. This was interesting that we saw a scene in which there was actual physical damage against Big Daddy.
Michael Myers.
Yeah, it did kind of have Michael Myers vibes. This is interspersed with a couple other. I think this is the last we see of Gino and Patrick in this episode. But we go to a party at Sam's house where Fran is arriving. Everyone is coked up, but Fran's going to do tarot readings. They take her upstairs. No one really seems all that interested in tarot at first, but she starts doing them for various people, and it's similar to that scene from a couple episodes ago, Bad Fortune. She starts flipping death cards for everybody.
Everyone. Boom. First card, death. death, and they kind of respond to it a little differently. Most of them are like, "Ha ha ha, ha. That's
Oh.
like it's funny or silly," because they're all partying.
This whole tarot thing, it just feels too on the
Forced.
nose for me. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, I mean, it's a way to get Fran into the story more, but again, her purpose is doesn't seem completely necessary.
right. Then we jump to, and this is the darkest scene of this episode.
Hmm.
Henry wandering into the woods where various people are having sex, and he stumbles across Sam. Sam says he's found that piece of meat, and that piece of meat is poor Theo, drugged up, chained to a tree. Uh, this is when I was like, I thought he picked up the other drink intentionally, like even anticipating Sam might do this. I also thought here, like, doesn't Adam wonder where Sam, like, where
Yeah,
Theo is? They were together at the thing, and then
we
Adam's
never
just back
saw.
home. It's
Yeah,
just
we
so
never saw what
strange.
happened there. There's no like I'll be back or see you soon or yeah, and it's nighttime, so it's weird.
Right. I also just wrote here that like this Sam is a really horrible person. Like, agreed that it's well acted, but it's pretty just like absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he's a sex trafficker basically at this point in
Mm-hmm.
time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But Sam tells Henry that because Theo is like unable to really talk, tells Henry that this is Theo's fantasy. And I also noted at this point that the way Theo's chained up, he kind of looks like the Sentinel that Whiteley was putting together, kind of
I
with the arms in the same position and everything, right?
I thought the same thing. Absolutely. Yep. In that kind of
So
crucifix position,
yeah,
savior position.
exactly. So Henry starts to strip down, and kind of is giving this whole spiel about these young people who are just throwing away what they should be treasuring, being, I guess they're,
Youthful,
yeah, just like
having a future.
right. Behind them is Big Daddy, steps out of the woods. Henry, this is interesting too, because Henry sees Big Daddy. And I don't think we have any indication at this point that Henry would have
Has
HIV.
No, we haven't seen anything that indicates that, as far as I know.
Right. And Henry runs away and leaves Theo to effectively be killed. It's in this whole scene that happens is very surreal. That happens next. It's very misty. There's like a very strange pagan-like scene. Big Daddy disappears seemingly, and a bunch of young guys with deer antlers come out, and there's so many
In
things happening here.
speedos.
Right? In speedos, I think we're supposed to think it's all the guys Theo's had sex with over the years. Is how I interpreted it.
He says,
And
I know you, I'm all of you, I photographed you." So it's a lot of the people that
right, and
he
then
knows,
well, and the deer antlers clearly being tied to the deer that had, the disease at the beginning of the season too.
where they had to wipe
Um,
out the population on the island.
right, and then they untie him and they seem to like surround him and gently carry him away. And I mean, this seems to be him dying. It's some metaphor for him dying, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
where this episode ends. To me, and I mentioned this to you before we started recording. This particular scene almost felt like it was supposed to be a homage to some movie, but I didn't know what movie it was an homage to. So if that is the case, you said you didn't know either. I'd be very curious if any of our fans know, or any of our listeners know, like if this was a homage to something specific, because it seemed very specific, right? And kind of, I don't want to say totally out of nowhere, but it seemed a little bit, I don't know, it seemed a little bit odd.
Yeah, I got, Shakespearean community theater vibes out of this whole sequence. It was a little, I don't know. I mentioned it to you earlier. This is where the episode really kind of lost me. um, I get that it's probably supposed to be this poetic metaphor for Theo passing into the next realm or moving on into a new life or just dying. But not having a brutal death was a choice. Obviously, he doesn't get murdered by Big Daddy.
Big
He
Daddy.
gets carried out by all these, deer. And he also like kind of they do a good shot of him kind of shedding a tear as he's like getting carried away, and smiling ish as the whole scene kind of, which was a dark, misty, foggy woods scene, just sort of brightens up, and then it kind of all like spills and flows outward to be just like pure white. Generally, that's kind of a technique used to show someone passing into the light, to heaven, perhaps, showing that Theo is a good guy. And having the people who seem to be somewhat innocent people as well taking him to that place is a choice. So that's I'm pretty straightforward about what I think we're supposed to take out of it. The sequence itself seems silly. I don't know. It
It's
was
beauty.
fine.
I thought it was well shot,
Yeah.
from a directorial and cinematographic.
Maybe the costuming of it, like with the guys as deer, it was just kind of, I don't know. It felt a little cheesy, but it
Yeah.
was shot beautifully. I think Jennifer Lynch is great director. I'm impressed with how she did it. I
Yeah.
just didn't. Maybe it's the costuming that I just didn't like. I don't know.
I mean, and this is also where the episode ends. I don't know. Let's go ahead and go into
Yeah.
our full kind of takes on the episode. So go ahead.
So I had a different idea of how this episode would play out based off the cold open. I thought we were going to the island, and it like almost like And Then There Were None, Agatha Christie, where one by one we'll start like seeing some of our main characters like getting knocked off or disappearing or um, something happening to them. Uh, what we get instead is a lot of inner relationship drama, which is fine. That's kind of a lot of what's happening during this episode and throughout the season. But then it goes into a weird, I think we're spending too much time with Big Daddy not doing anything. He just literally appears, and I guess he got in a fight with Gino and Adam, but we haven't seen him really hurt anyone yet. I guess besides throwing them around. I just with two more episodes to go, I would have liked some more finite action that determined like gave us a few more answers perhaps. And
Right.
then Theo's death just felt, I don't know, I cared about him. I think he's a good character and I was excited to see his evolution, but he didn't. I don't know why he was the one that was chosen to die first. I think
I
it
mean,
would
it
have,
was tragic. I mean, I think it's
yeah,
supposed to be because he was like changing his ways and he finally found true love after going through a bunch of stuff. So it heightened the tragedy. He was also
right.
young and beautiful and stuff. Like the idea being it would like be less impactful if it's Sam, the first one who dies or something like that.
Right. I guess it's just because we've seen some of the other guys have like the pock marks sooner and have more of them, and Theo just seemed to be throwing up, and I don't know. Again, I'm okay with him dying. I definitely understand why we're supposed to feel sad about it. I felt weird. I, that being said, and then the Gino pivot to a different personality or different desires and concerns than the previous episode, and then Henry pivoting to being this desperate, sad sack who's in love with Gino, but also on opiates. Like it was a little like, how can we create some drama in this episode? Let's change the characters a little bit. They did this in Glee a lot too, if I remember. Like people all of a sudden would have different motivations. But that being said, there's still a lot I liked. I like the premise. I like everyone being stuck in one location and like stuff happening and running into different people. I love that type of a story. It's very Robert Altman was always really good at that as a director. But and then again, hello is so brilliant and funny. I think it's just a
It's so
great
subtle too.
choice.
Yeah.
That wasn't probably in the script at all. It was just like, hey,
Improvised.
you're going
Yeah.
to be at the bar and you're going to try to wave things down. You're an older man, and this is obviously much more of a young guy's world. How would you get the bartender's attention? Brilliant.
Right.
So I gave a lot of negatives in there, but ultimately I really did like the episode. I'm going to give this 4 out of 5 Mai Tais. It's a fun location premise, and I think that's what really sells me on having a good time, even though the ending was weird to me and I needed more things to sort of happen. It was still okay. The dialogue, character choices, but it still was a fun time. So I'm actually giving it 4. That's kind of higher than I thought I would give it. What
I'm
do you?
gonna be I'm gonna be a little bit harder on it than I think you
Okay,
are for
good, good.
that. So yeah, because I agree with you that I feel like it had a lot of potential. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, if we were gonna be trapped on Fire Island here, I feel like it would be a lot more effective with a real serial killer rather than this like
Yes,
weird
yes,
big, Big Daddy not really doing much except for the fight, and then like Sam just like in a really disgusting way,
yeah,
effectively putting Theo in a position to be. I think we're supposed to view that as like Theo dies from HIV while he's on the tied to the tree, I guess. Yeah, I just feel like it was a frustrating episode for Gino and Patrick because Gino was acting in reverse of how he had acted in that previous episode, and like Patrick being all grumpy was just frustrating. He was kind of a dick. Um, you felt bad certainly for Theo and Adam, but I'm still confused about why. I'm confused about why like Adam didn't hang around for Theo when he was so sickly at the bar and doesn't seem
Yeah.
to be worried or wondering where he is. Or I'm still confused about how Theo drank the drink with poison in it. I mean, I need to watch that scene exchange where he dumps the poison into the drink again because it's like, to your
Right.
point, there's some weird sleight of hand there apparently. I don't love the turn we took with Henry, where he suddenly becomes this kind of needy and desperate beggar that then goes to have sex in the woods. And I mean, it just wasn't really redeeming for everybody. And then honestly, I just find Fran annoying. I'm sorry. I don't love the tarot plot, and I know we brought her along here. It's like just tossing water on Gino for no reason seems like being an ass. So yeah, I feel like it was a premise with potential that, in my mind, kind of flopped. I feel really bad that Theo died. That was very tragic. I'm glad that it wasn't in a brutal way, given how Sam set him up. Um, but yeah, I mean, I felt like this is what I was afraid was going to happen when we killed the serial killer and 2 episodes ago. Is we had too many episodes to go where the serial killer is a concept, and it's really hard to just make that suspenseful or effective. And I didn't feel like
There,
I don't feel much suspense anymore around Big Daddy. Really.
well, especially because we're looking at it through the lens of the future, which is they're all going to die most likely. Unfortunately, like we know this because of the course of that disease.
Well, and we're gonna jump ahead to I think what's the last is 86, right? We're gonna like
It's
the last two episodes
87, I think.
or 1987.
Yeah.
Yeah, part one and part two. So apparently there will be some survivor in theory who lives to 1987, which I guess we'll find out at the beginning of next episode. I didn't watch the preview.
So I did, and they aged them up a little bit. There's a few you'll see.
Okay.
You do see Henry. You see Sam, who looks very worse for the wear. I think those are the only two I remember seeing for sure, and they are seen at a funeral. So
we'll see who else,
Yeah.
if any, happened to survive. But yeah, this episode just kind of felt bleak and I don't know, somewhat disappointing for the characters I've really grown to like in a lot of different ways. With them just like kind of all acting, or many of them acting out of character. So that being the case, I'm going to give it 3. I think my tie. I think this might be my least favorite. I mean, Bad Fortune I didn't love. I feel like because of what this is, I just feel like the way that the trajectory of this season, if we just let Whiteley live longer, could have, or like had treated Big Daddy in a different way, could have been, there could be more tension at this point in time. Maybe that's just me not feeling it, but that's where I'm at, is 3 my tie. So I think that puts us at 7.
Yeah, every single point you made, I agree with. I don't know why I just was more of a sucker for this one.
Well, I mean, like you said, it's the Fire Island environment is fun, and I feel like you do get a kind of a sense of the island as a character a little bit. I just feel like it didn't fully do it justice,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's this episode, and now we're moving headlong into the final 2 episodes of the season, which is effectively a 2-part episode. So we'll talk about that soon.
A fun thing that I looked up is part 1 is going to be directed and written by Our Lady J. Okay. And then part 2 is written by Ned Martell and Charlie Carver, who the 3 of them all together did this episode. And part 2 will be directed by Jennifer Lynch again. So, nice. And Jennifer Lynch directed Blackout this season.
Oh, yeah.
So you're right. Okay. She was on one.
That's right. Right. Cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm curious to see where it goes and kind of how these 2 episodes will culminate across. I mean, it seems like it's just going to be the kind of, fallout from the disease, right? So
yeah, it's the tension's gone, like you said. It's kind of frustrating. I would really prefer an actual live serial killer running around taking them out.
Yeah, it's Well,
even if that is a metaphor for HIV, like it's just so way too literal right now.
Exactly. Well, we'll see where it goes. Excited to still see the end of this season.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I would say for the most part, the season has been really terrifically acted, I would say. And so I'm excited to talk more about that and kind of when we get to the end of the season, converse about where we feel the season sits in the I don't know, oeuvre of American Horror Story. So all that said, Kris, I guess up until then, where can people find you between next episode?
Instagram at Kris Husted, Kris with a K.
Oh, wow.
I still have my Twitter, but I'm just not using it until I know what's going on, and I probably will just lose it. But anyway, I'm just not going into it.
Well,
I'm not going
apparently
to use
Twitter
it.
might go bankrupt and disappear anyway, is what everyone's saying. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens there. You can find me on Instagram too at TJMoss11, and you can find us on YouTube at This American Horror Story Podcast on YouTube. And as always, you can reach out to us via email at thisamericanhorrorstory@gmail.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/This American Horror Story. Thanks to you all for listening. And until next week, the finales, happy hauntings.